What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my Motorola Moto G Pure review. So let's get started. Now, the Moto G Pure was launched in October of 2021, and it's yet another budget device from Motorola. Now, this phone is being sold factory unlocked. It will work with all the various US carriers, and it's also being offered at the actual carriers themselves. So I know, for example, this phone is being offered at Metro by T-Mobile. It's also at Boost Mobile, I believe Cricket Wireless as well. And many of these carriers are offering very generous deals if you do want to get this device, especially if you want to switch in from another carrier. So to my understanding, at some of the carriers, you can even get this phone potentially for free. Now, we'll be linking to it in the video description, and I'm sure price is subject to change as time goes on. Now, this device does feature a MSRP of $159.99, so even at the MSRP, it is a very affordable smartphone. And it certainly is nice that we do still have affordable devices being launched, because not everybody's looking to spend a ton of money on a smartphone. Now, of course, with that affordable price does come with quite a few compromises. So if you are looking for a phone that's packed full of various features, then the Moto G Pure most likely will not be a good option for you. But if you are looking for a phone that at least can take care of the fundamentals, such as phone calls, text messages, occasional web browsing, and also some occasional social media usage, then the Moto G Pure likely will be a decent option for you. But in this review, I'm going to be diving into everything that you will want to know about this device, so I hope you're ready for it. Now let me show you first everything that comes included here in the box. Here is the box, so you can see right there, Moto G Pure. Now again, if you do get this phone from a carrier, it is possible that the packaging might be a little bit different, so keep that in mind. This is, of course, the unlocked version of the phone. So getting into the box here, we have some literature. We also have a SIM card removal tool. We have a 10-watt USB wall adapter for charging. And we have a USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. So we pretty much get everything that we need to get started here with the Moto G Pure. Now with this device, we're getting a large 6.5-inch display. Now this display features IPS LCD technology. It is a 720p display, but that is pretty much expected for a very budget-minded device. We're getting a PPI of 270, a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor, which is pretty consistent with many of the newer devices that have been launching. And we're getting an 80.6% screen-to-body ratio. So as far as the general form factor and design goes of at least the front panel of the phone, this is pretty generic, especially in the sense that we have a water drop notch right there and a thicker bottom bezel. This design has been repeated a ton of times with various phones from a variety of different brands, and this general design easily could have come out in 2018 and been pretty consistent with many of the other phones that had launched at that time. So I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. Again, it is a pretty practical design, but at the same time, it doesn't feature really anything new or different that we haven't seen before. But for most people out there, again, if you just want a phone that works and gets the job done, then that doesn't really even matter. Now, as far as the display goes, of course, I did mention that it is 720p, which isn't quite as good as 1080p, but in general, colors are good enough. Also, things look decently crisp and clear. So if you're using this display to watch videos or browsing the web or reading an article or an ebook, for example, it's going to get the job done with no issues at all. Maybe the only downside with this display is that sometimes the viewing angles might not be that great, especially in outdoor environments. But again, for a budget device like this one, you really can't ask for too much. Now, in that water drop notch is a 5-megapixel front-facing camera. And a little bit later on in the video, I'll be showing you a variety of different photo and video samples from this device. But in general, I've been pretty happy with the results, again, taking into account how affordable this phone actually is. Now with this phone, we're getting 32 gigabytes of internal storage, and along with that, we're getting microSD card expansion. Now to be honest, 32 gigs of internal storage is not a lot. And to make matters even worse, the system software takes up a good percentage of the actual storage on the phone. So you can see here, I've already managed to use 55% of the internal storage, and the actual system software takes up 11 gigabytes of it. So again, you're definitely going to want to pair this up with a microSD card, but in general, I still wish we would have gotten 64 gigs instead, because in my opinion, even having a microSD card doesn't make it quite as good as having a lot of internal storage. But if you want to put a microSD card in the phone and then use it to offload your various videos and photos, then that certainly will be an improvement versus doing nothing. But definitely consider how much space your current phone has, and then take that into account when getting this device, because if this device has less space than your current phone, then I'd imagine you are going to be running into some problems. Now, there's no wireless charging with the Moto G Pure, which is to be expected, as this is a budget device. But one cool surprise is that not only do we get a fingerprint sensor on the rear of the phone, but this device also features face unlock. So we'll give the fingerprint sensor a try right now. Nice and quick and accurate. You know, not quite as fast as a more premium smartphone, but for what it is, it does work, which is great. And then you can see here in the device security section, we also have face unlock. So I do appreciate that we have multiple methods for getting into the phone, as it certainly does come in handy. Now with this device, we're getting a dual camera setup on the rear of the phone. We're getting a 13 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera to assist with portrait mode. And the Moto G Pure does support portrait mode for both the rear and front cameras, so I do appreciate that. I know that that is a very popular feature with many people, as they do like to take those photos with those nice blurred out backgrounds. But one feature that is missing here with the Moto G Pure, as far as the cameras go, is an ultra wide angle camera. Now we have been seeing ultra wide cameras with many phones in this budget segment, so if that is a feature that maybe you currently have, or a feature that you do want to gain, then just know that with this phone, you're not getting it. Now, video recording with this device does max out at 1080p with both the front and rear cameras, which is totally fine and completely expected. You can see that we have photo mode, of course, video mode as well. We can swipe up, and there's some various settings here that we can adjust, like aspect ratio, timer, flash, active photos. Also, we can go over to this menu in the bottom right corner, and there's even more options like portrait mode, cutout, spot color, panorama, live filter, pro mode. There's also a time-lapse mode for video. There's even a more detailed settings menu right here as well. Now, I will be making a dedicated camera tips and tricks video for the Moto G Pure, so we'll go deeper into all these various features. But essentially, it's not feature-packed because we really don't even get that many different cameras as it is here with the phone. But for what it is, if you just want a phone that can take decent photos and videos, this will get the job done. Now, taking a look at these various picture samples, in general, I am pretty happy with it. Again, you can't expect too much from an affordable entry-level smartphone like this one. But at the same time, I feel like the image quality is plenty good, and if you want to take a photo and post it on social media, you're certainly not going to be embarrassing yourself by any means with the quality. So it certainly works. And that's pretty much all you can ask for with a device like this one. And I'll let these samples speak for themselves. But let's now take a look at some video samples from the device. What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with a front-facing test video from the Motorola Moto G Pure. Definitely curious to know what you think of both the video and audio quality from this test. But from what I can see through the viewfinder, it looks pretty decent for a budget device. But again, we'll have to see how the actual final video looks once I load it onto my computer. And here is a rear-facing test video from the Motorola Moto G Pure. Once again, it is in 1080p. We have pretty quick autofocus in video mode, which is definitely very awesome. So far, it seems really good for a budget device like this one. Now with the Moto G Pure, we're getting 3 gigabytes of RAM paired up with the MediaTek Helio G25 processor. So 3 gigs of RAM is pretty decent. Of course, that's probably the bare minimum at this point that you want to get with an Android phone in 2021. And then the MediaTek Helio G25 is certainly nothing special, but at the same time, it's at least good enough that the phone works. I know at a bare minimum you'd want the phone to actually work, but my point is that I've tested quite a few phones in the past where the processor is so slow that you can hardly do anything with the phone. But at least with the Helio G25, it does make this phone plenty usable. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're using this phone for the main fundamentals that you'd want to use a smartphone for, such as taking photos and videos, and also making phone calls, text messages, occasional web browsing, occasional social media, then the performance will be good enough. But if you are someone that is constantly using their phone, then I think you'll definitely be disappointed with the performance that you're getting here with the Moto G Pure. And I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test with the device, and you can see I got a single core score of 133 and a multi-core score of 497. And what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of whether or not the Moto G Pure is going to be a performance upgrade for you. Because it is possible that this phone might be slower than your current phone. And if that's the case, then I probably wouldn't recommend upgrading. Now with the Moto G Pure, we're getting a 4,000 milliamp hour internal battery paired up with the ability to recharge it at 10 watts. So in general, not the biggest battery that I've seen, but at the same time, not bad either. And then having 10 watt fast charging isn't the fastest fast charging I've seen, but at the same time, it is better than 5 watts. So in general, you're gonna have a pretty good experience recharging this phone at a decently rapid rate. And at the same time, you're gonna be getting at least a full day of battery life out of it. Now moving into the software, with the Moto G Pure, we are getting Android 11. And in general, it's a pretty stock Android experience, just like we get with pretty much all Motorola devices that have launched in the last several years. Now, Motorola does add in a variety of their own bonus features into the device, and I covered quite a few of those in my dedicated tips and tricks video that's already out. So I definitely recommend watching that video to learn how to get the most out of the software here on the device. But in general, it's a nice, clean, refined software experience, so I have no issues with it. Really the only downside, and this is pretty consistent with most lower-end devices anyway, but Motorola doesn't have the best reputation for updating their lower-end phones in a timely manner, let alone sometimes at all. So, for example, the various Motorola phones that launched in early 2021 that came with Android 10 are just now getting the Android 11 update, but Android 12 is already out. So, essentially, with these Motorola phones, it seems like they're always one generation behind the newest version of Android that's been released. But if you don't mind not having the newest version of Android, then I don't think it will really be an issue for you. And one good thing is that Motorola does at least deploy security patches pretty consistently, so at a bare minimum, that is pretty important, and I'm glad they're doing that. And then one downside that you will want to keep in mind with the Moto G Pure is that there is no NFC with this phone. So if you do like to use your device to make mobile contactless payments via Google Pay, in a similar way that people can make payments with Apple Pay, then just know that you're not getting that here with the Moto G Pure. Now I know that there's a lot of people who don't care about that feature, and if that's the case, then I would still continue to not care about it. But if that is a feature that you use already with your current phone, and you find it to be really convenient, then just know that you're not getting that here with the Moto G Pure. Now as far as the hardware of the phone goes, it's certainly not exciting by any means. The device is made completely out of plastic, besides the display being made out of glass. So in that sense, there's really nothing special about it, but I am glad at least that we are getting this matte finish on the back of the phone. It doesn't really look premium, but at the same time, I am glad that it's not glossy, because all these phones that have a glossy back tend to pick up quite a few fingerprints. And you can see by looking at the back of the device, it doesn't pick up any fingerprints for the most part, and I do like this wavy texture that it has. So it's not like a really cheap material, but at the same time, it doesn't feel premium either. But the phone does feel well constructed in the sense that it doesn't feel like it's just going to fall apart. Now taking a closer look at the left side of the device, we have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. Then on the right side of the phone, we have the power button, volume down and volume up. Then up top here, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, and we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the phone, we have the microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and we have the speaker. And then on the back of the device, we have the dual camera setup, the flash, and the fingerprint sensor. So in general, this phone does have a pretty minimalist design and layout, but again, if you're looking for a phone that can just take care of the core functions that you'd want from a smartphone, then this phone is designed ideally for that. So in general, the video viewing experience with the Moto G Pure is actually pretty decent. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you only get audio coming out of the main speaker in the bottom when watching video content, so there is no stereo sound in the sense that you get audio out of both the earpiece and the speaker when watching video or listening to music, but it does get decently loud in the sense that you could easily just sit down and watch a video and you're not going to have any issues or any annoyances by having it have a bad speaker. So the speaker is loud enough to actually use to consume content. And also, with this display being so large at 6.5 inches, despite it being 720p, it still does provide a good experience because everything is nice and big. You can even crop in further if you want to crop into that 20:9 aspect ratio. So it does give you a pretty immersive video viewing experience. And again, compared to budget phones in the past, where they typically would have really small displays, I really do appreciate that we're getting such a large display here with the phone, as it does make it great for watching video content, for example. Now, of course, that same idea does carry over to reading articles because, again, you'll be able to see things quite a bit larger here in the phone compared to a phone that has a smaller display. So in general, I'm a big fan of the form factor here with the Motorola Moto G Pure. But this concludes my review of the Moto G Pure. Again, by no means is it the best phone out there, but as a budget device, I feel like we're getting a pretty good value out of it. So you really have to keep your expectations in line, especially considering that at many carriers, this phone is often given out for free in exchange for people switching in from a different carrier. So you definitely get what you pay for, but at the same time, the Moto G Pure is good enough for the regular tasks that you would want to accomplish with a smartphone. But I hope you enjoyed my review of the Moto G Pure. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Take a look at the various links in the video description to see the most up-to-date pricing and availability. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.